let's go to Baton Rouge, a place that has been a house of horrors for the Ole Miss Rebels in recent years. Ole Miss is the favorite coming into this game, though. We saw Ole Miss have a really nice bounce back in Columbia, South Carolina. But this game is the one we kind of circled when we said, oh, Ole Miss has a very manageable schedule. But for whatever reason, they struggle in Baton Rouge. So if they can get through this, they're going to be okay. Do we think they can get through this?
Can I ask you your general temperature on LSU's team this year? When you're doing bracketology and bubble watch, when I'm doing it, I have to consider them a little bit more because I think that's more of the range that they're in than your range. But do you think this LSU team still has a pulse to be in the discussion? Because they are kind of living in the background right now a little bit, right? Like for a team that's only lost once, right? Like they're not really at the forefront of the brain. And I don't know if there's a second level there. Harold Perkins being out for the year definitely hurts. But do you think this team has something to it that can get them back on the radar? I mean, they win this game, then they're right back into the mix. But I have had them as kind of an afterthought in my head for some reason, and I'm trying to figure out if that's stupid.
No, so I think if I were to sum up LSU and the way I feel about LSU right now, it would be this.
Right.
That's pretty much it. They lost to USC. USC hadn't been great. They were getting trucked by South Carolina till Lenora Sellers got hurt. They ended up winning that game. That was a nice win. But look at what Ole Miss did when they went into South Carolina. So Blake Baker is the LSU defensive coordinator. We saw him at Missouri last year against this Ole Miss team. And they, had a shootout just like LSU and Ole Miss had a shootout last year. Blake Baker did that and gave up all those points with a much better set of defensive personnel last year than he has this game. He had a first round edge rusher. He had two corners who are starting in the NFL right now. He had Tyron Hopper, who's a tackling machine at linebacker. LSU's defensive personnel is not as good as Missouri's was last year. And they got to play this offense, which arguably has better pieces now than it had then. So I don't know. It's the history, and it's weird because I said we're talking about Oklahoma and Texas. The history of it matters. The way the rivalry works matters. So Ole Miss hasn't won in Baton Rouge since 2008. It was the Jevin Sneed quarterback, Houston Nutt coach team that was really good. That actually had beaten the team that won the national title. That they beat that Florida team that won the national title that same year. They have not won in Baton Rouge since, and they obviously play there every other year. And there have been games where Ole Miss should have been the better team and just could not beat them. So I don't know. It's going to be rocking in Baton Rouge. It's going to be even more crazy if they lose. The post-game shows are going to be amazing if Ole Miss comes in here and wins, because the LSU fans at that point are going to be like, uh-oh, something's up. Maybe the playoffs aren't happening for us. So that's the part to watch here. This is desperation mode for LSU and desperation mode for Ole Miss. We're getting there quick for these two. And I just, if I look at what we've seen from Ole Miss this year, I don't know that LSU can control the tempo the way Kentucky can control the tempo. That's how Kentucky beat Ole Miss. They controlled tempo that entire game. They didn't let Ole Miss's offense on the field with any sort of regularity, and it got them completely out of sync. So beyond the first drive of the game, you didn't see what you're used to seeing from Ole Miss's offense. Against South Carolina, Ole Miss capitalized on some mistakes, but the defense held up really well, and they didn't need it. And that may be, what we've talked about with Ole Miss. Can you win a game in a different way? Maybe the South Carolina game was that kind of game, because it wasn't like Ole Miss was moving the ball up and down the field on them. Once they capitalized on that, when Beamer went for the fake punt early in the game, Ole Miss stopped it and then made South Carolina pay immediately. They didn't just go up and down the field the rest of the game. They scored some more points, and then they just sort of shut South Carolina down the rest of the way. If Ole Miss can win that way, I'm still pretty comfortable with Ole Miss making the playoff.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I'm completely out on Ole Miss as a top 10 team right now. I think that they had a bad game, but when you think about the roster that they returned last year and what they added to it, like in theory, this is a team that should be better than LSU at this point. And I understand the history, and I understand how hard it is to play there, though regretfully I've never seen a game in Death Valley. I would love to do that one day.
We're going to make it happen.
I mean, it is embarrassing that I've never been there. Like
I had an LSU fan friend text me, and he said, when are we going to make Ari ascend? And what he means is bring Ari to a tailgate in Baton Rouge. We'll make it happen.
We have to do a Saturday where we just don't cover the game and just get hammered and just, can we do that? Where I just like write a column of like, here's what it was like to experience Baton Rouge for the first time. Like I would love to
I'll help edit it. Maybe a little bit. Can you slur your words when you type them? Is that possible?
I could write a pretty good column drunk, I bet.
The show of us, hammered, just sitting outside an RV in Baton Rouge at the end of a night would be pretty good, I think. Or it could be terrible. We'll have to test market that one. It's funny because this is the tailgating bowl, but anybody who's ever actually tailgated at Ole Miss and LSU knows that LSU is far superior. Like, you can't even have an open flame at Ole Miss. You can cook anything you want at LSU.
Yeah, I mean, it is Louisiana. What are they going to do? Like, it's just like that's God's country down there. So I am not out on Ole Miss yet. If they lose this game, I am 1,000% out. And I guess, like you said, it kind of goes goes the same for both teams. So I'm going to pick Ole Miss to not only win but cover the spread here, and I'm going to blindly put faith back into the team that they built. And maybe that's stupid, but I think that this is a better football team.
I'm not blindly putting my faith in them. I just think this matchup favors Ole Miss. I think LSU's personnel defensively probably not set up the best to deal with this kind of offense. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss here to cover the spread. Not blindly putting faith in them, but don't let me down in Lane Kiffin, because
they should be better. They should be better, especially with
if they lose this game, they're not going to the playoff because they're going to lose. They'll lose to Georgia. They'll lose to somebody else. Like, they have to win this game. And LSU, obviously, if they want to go to the playoff, they have to win this game too. I'm not looking at LSU as a playoff contender right now. I would be if they win this game, but I'm taking Ole Miss.
Yeah, and if Ole Miss loses, it's like the first case study of going all in during a advantageous offseason where you return a team that won 10 games and have a pretty easy schedule. For that to go kaput before mid-October would be an absolute disaster.
It would be. Although if someone were trying to hire Lane Kiffin away from Ole Miss, he would be available at a convenient time. But that would be a team that we were already.
But then the luster of what you would want in Lane Kiffin probably would have been
exactly. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't, Ari.
It's like buying a cashmere sweater. Right, it's like buying a cashmere sweater that's beautiful, but it has a red dot on it. You just hope that no one will notice. You know what I mean?
Exactly.